again, and since you're live, yes, so it thinks I'm live. It doesn't show me what I'm currently seeing. I will need someone on Discord to tell me if I'm actually live. It's now counting. Yes, that looks like me. That looks like it's live. All good. Okay. So, I'm also on the Discord, and I see there are people starting to chat there now. Oh, and I see a bunch of you are in the audio channel now, so you can hear me on Discord if you want the audio. Though the audio on Discord, I think, comes through a bit sooner than the audio on YouTube, so you might have to kind of play around and see what works for you. You can always turn off the Discord and the audio or the YouTube audio. Okay, so sorry I was a wee bit late this morning. I can see I've got a group of 7 of you on the Discord audio, and some of you in the Discord chat room. So yes, and someone's posted the live link, which is great. Okay, so today I was going through and looking at the voting, and it seemed that continuous integration and deployment was at the top of the list for people for me to talk about today. Now, some of you will have worked with GitLab in the 200 level course, so the cloud computing course, and that's where Marish and Christopher work on deploying Docker images, and you can use GitLab to deploy those Docker images. Now, what we're going to talk about today, and certainly for a lot of you who potentially haven't used any of those, and certainly if you're in the Discord chat, how many have not used Docker and images? Right, so I've just put in a line there that you can vote on by doing the hands up emoji. So I'll put in one hand up, so you can click on it if you agree. Where is it? There's someone put there. That's pretty good. You guys are pretty good at this. So there's some of you who haven't used any of this continuous integration and deployment stuff before. So in today's discussion, my goal was to talk about the principles rather than mechanics of continuous integration and deployment. Well, to start with the principles, show you a few of the mechanics, discuss those mechanics, discuss why you would be interested in using them as a programming professional, and we can kind of dig in a little bit into what you might do and why you would do it that way. I've also got some links in the CI/CD markdown page so that you could go and read more if that's how you prefer to learn this stuff. And also that we can discuss, have not used Docker, so 16. That's quite a lot of you haven't used these before, so I'll have to explain a bunch of how this works, obviously. So we'll go through and we'll talk about why you use them. I'll get you started, and then basically what you can do this week is in your own projects, you can start playing with the very first bit of your continuous integration deployment, and you can start thinking about it and start trialing it. If you can get it working early, then as you do things, you can build it up and make it larger. If you wait right to the end, it can sometimes be difficult to add it late to a project, because you have to do more work, and so it's more daunting. Whereas if you started early, you've got such a small project that it's easy to find the problems and find the bugs and get it kind of working in the way that you expect on a very small project. And then as the project grows, occasionally your continuous integration stuff will grow with it. So yeah, that's kind of why I tend to do it early in the project, to get it started and start thinking about it, and then have it grow with the project. So what we've got is, if we go to the page, I'll make that slightly larger because that's obviously too small for you to read, though some of you hopefully will. I hope all of you have access to this repository now, which is the IMT3602 courses page. If you don't have access to get.gvk.edu.ntnu.no, then log on, request access. We can get you granted access and stuff. We do advise you to use your NTNU logins and etc. In here. So in today's, I've done a couple of things. I've added the student project listing in Wiki. If you're managing a project, it would be good for you to go to that Wiki and go in here and mark up the page with information. And so the way you do this is, you can see here, we have one project. I've already had that shared with me from Carl Findel. Though Carl, if you're here, you are not enrolled in this course, it appears. So you're not on my Blackboard list of students. Leon Thomas are, but Carl isn't. So you might have to make sure you're enrolled in this course if you intend to take this course. But here it's got the group number, the students who are involved, their handles, and the link. Now that's great for me because then I can go and follow those. I've also got a list of all the students here, which are who are in the course, and then I put in which group they're next to and what's their GitLab connection, right? So this allows us to, if you know someone's student ID, you know their email, so it's not exactly private information, and you can work out their username. So again, not private information. So yeah, if you guys can update that, you should be able to go in there, and if you have the edit function, what you can do is this is in Markdown. You will have to learn to use Markdown, right? That's a requirement of the course. Tables are relatively simple in Markdown. You can see that they're divided by vertical bars. Update it by adding a row with the bars in the right places. So I'll let you guys edit and update that, because this is a collaborative course, so it's good for you guys to actually edit these files. Again, if two of you try and edit at the same time, we'll get a merge conflict. We can discuss merge conflicts and version control. Again, it's something we need to talk about in this course. And I suppose that's another question I have for you on the, I can edit the page, so, I can't edit the page, so I update my own row. Right, okay, so what you need to do is, if you can't edit the page, you need to request developer/reporter access. I think you can edit it with reporter access, at least developer. With developer, you can do those updates. I trust all of you, and also everything you do is logged in the repo anyway, so if you try and screw things up, it's logged, we can always roll back. So if you request developer access, I'll give that to you, and then you can start editing the wiki, right? So I expect a few of you to give me developer access or developer requests. That then means that I will get an email here, or I'll get a request under settings, which has I've got to actually make that smaller and smaller and smaller until settings actually has members. And if I go to members, if you make the request, so Benjamin just made a request for developer access. So thank you, Benjamin. I can then click approve, and Benjamin can now start editing. Okay, so that allows you to start editing those pages. So some of you can start making those requests. I'm sure you can help each other to show you how to do that. I can't ask for permission because yes, more people require. There's two more. Excellent. Request and request. I'm already a developer, so I can't go to the request development. I don't have the button that says request development because I've already got it. So, but if I click on those, that'll approve you both. Oh. Okay, not found. That's an odd error. I think they were both approved. Okay, so now yeah, it's all good. So I'm giving you guys developer access to this repository, which means, yes, you can change files, you can edit files, you can correct things, you can add things. Remember, you are logged in as your account, so we do know that you are changing it. So, be good to each other, be reasonable, don't screw around, all of those things. But this is us working together. You are becoming professionals, so I'm going to start treating you like professionals and give you access to the teaching repository in the same way that well, not quite the same way. I'm the owner, which gives me a few more rights. I can add people, but you guys can all be developers. Okay, so if we go back to the project, so that's where you can update your information on there, and you can also come onto the issues. I believe guests can vote on issues. I'm not entirely sure, but if you go to issues, this is where we have the list of issues, which are our lectures. Right. So if you can see here, we had 4 votes for it, which out of a class of 30 is only 10%, only 12%. So it's not like a huge number, but it's still one that was asked. So we'll probably do part 1 today, and I'll probably touch on this again later because some of you will try it now and some of you will try it later, and you'll have some questions, and so we can look at this topic continually over the semester, because there are a lot of parts to continuous integration and deployment, and we won't necessarily get all of DevOps, which is part of what this is, done in a single lecture. So don't stress if you don't feel like we've had enough time and you haven't got far enough with it. We will get there in the end. So yep, okay, that's all good. So if we move back to here, you guys can then vote on which topics you want by clicking on the upvotes and upvoting the lecture of the topic, and that way it'll bubble to the top. I'll then move it into done. There's your upvote down in this corner down here, down way over there. So that's where you upvote to say that you'd be interested in having more of this or one of these other topics. If you want to add an issue, i.e. that you feel you'd like to cover during the course. Someone asked me about my background and how much professional programming I've done and where I'm getting this information from. You could have you could request a lecture on that sort of thing. I can also bring in some guest lectures, so I can get in. There's a few of my professionals who still live in Norway, who I have connections with, that I can bring in to give some guest lectures. If you want, say, someone from Vixel to come and talk about their process and who's currently working, and also someone like Jason Mackey, who's down at Argens, or Harold Humber, he can also come and give a talk. So there are various people I can get to come in and talk to you if you request a guest lecture from a particular type of developer. I can also potentially bring in someone from we've got Agens, Vixel, Visma, who are a large IT company. So there are people who can come and talk to you about their process and what they currently do. So we do have those options, but I need to know when you feel that would be most valuable, what you'd be looking for it to cover. Yes, team collaboration is also good early on, because I'm sure some of you are having challenges, well, working in groups. It is actually also some of the material that I was teaching in 4th year in the 4th year villages expert in teamwork courses. So NTNU has a 4th year expert in teamwork courses. I took that for 2 years in Jövik, and so I can share with you some of the key points to that 4th year course, which many of you won't do, but we can kind of bring you up to speed on some of the techniques they use in that course. So So today I was going to look at continuous integration and deployment, and we're going to start that discussion, and we'll see how you go. If you're having problems, I can't see you guys, and I don't know how many of you can see me. I assume some of you can see me on the YouTube stream, either in the lab if you're sitting at laptops in the lab, or on the big screen if someone set that up, or wherever. Because you can all stream me, you don't necessarily need me on the big screen because I can be on every one of your screens, and you can be at home and all those sort of things. But what we're going to do today is if you have challenges or I'm confusing, please tell me in the Discord or in the YouTube live chat, right? Because normally I can see your faces. Now I can't, so I'm going to have to wing it and just hope I'm making sense. So, continuous integration and deployment. What this is, right? And so if we go to the continuous integration deployment, what I should actually do is I should go into this issue as you know, this is the issue that I'm working on. And thanks to you, I can actually write in a comment as C file. Now I have to try and remember, is this, can I just go square bracket CICD and round it with CICD.md. So here I'm just adding trying to see if I can add the link, because I'm playing with, it does require markdown. We're also going to talk about these quick actions that these things have. Quick actions allow me to change the times on things. So for example, I can go and I think it's that way spent to H. Is it that way? Might be the other way. Slash spend. It is the other way. Spend 2H. So if I commit a comment like that, it will actually change down here this time spent. Right? So I've added 2 hours of time spent. So we're going to spend some time here. This is very useful in your issues to track how long you've been doing things and what you're spending time on. Does that actually take me? No, it does not take me to CIDI. That's not a thing. If I can edit a comment, CICD. Normally you wouldn't edit commit a message, but you might as well do it this time. Oh, and that's still not taking me to the right place. It might need to be. Oh, I can show that later. So I'll fix it later. I'll put in the right mark down. So if we go back to the project, I've also added under the schedule. We go down the files and then under schedule. Now, normally I could put this as a README in a schedule file, and here is the introduction, and that's the YouTube link for last week, which is the committed file. I'll give you the YouTube link for this uploaded YouTube later. There's the markdown file, which should actually take me to the right place, which it does. Okay, so continuous integration and deployment. This is all part of trying to automate your build process. So I've just had a question. Is it better to use Toggle or to use GitLab for the tracking? That's right. So and yes, about 12 in the room. That's all good. They can see me. And the delay between Discord sound and YouTube sound is just below 30 seconds. So I assume YouTube is 30 seconds slower than Discord. So you guys are kind of, the Discord people are getting the kind of pre-version of the talk. So you guys manage the sound how you prefer. It can be useful to have me, and if you need to talk to me, you can also talk to me on the YouTube, if you on the Discord if you want to actively interrupt me. So is it better to use this stuff than Toggle? I do like the issue tracking in GitLab, partly because it is all integrated into your project. If you're using Trello boards, for example, and we're using Toggle for timing is quite good because it comes with the app, and you can just do it really quickly in its own web page, and kind of that Toggle is really great if you're just tracking your time, and then when you commit, you could put a spend in here. I know some lecturers use Toggle to record all the projects they're working on, so they can know how much time they're spending on each different kind of project. So that would make sense for that. If you want to track just the time you're spending in GitLab, then there are some benefits of putting in your time estimates and then your tracking times, because you can get the graphs and you can get the additional information. So for example, under here, if you are putting in time estimates, you can actually get information about the issues and the times. So when we look at the when it's this large, it's hard to so if we go to milestones, you get your burn down charts, and you can see how things are changing, and you can do this both on issue weight and issue and number of issues, and what you're closing off, and you can also get the estimates of time tracking. So knowing that you can see and work with some of these allows you to kind of track your time next to the work you're doing, and to some extent all of this is about doing that. One of the nice things about quick actions is not only can you do them in issues like that, when you run a command line commit, or any commit, if you're using a commit on the in an IDE or through source tree, you can add the /spend at that point in the commit message, and GitLab will run that action to your repository. So you can actually do that all at command line, which again is part of the kind of DevOps. It's the operations of getting things done. So one of the things they talk about with GitLab, with CI/CD, is it is just a small part of this whole automation and continuous integration and deployment. It's part of being a professional and automating what you do. So putting /spend into your commit message and putting in the hash number of the issue means that you're doing smart commits and you're connecting what you do to your repo. Now, I also have a lecture on smart commits, which I expect you to use. I was in a bit of a rush this morning, so I wasn't using many smart commits. But if we have a look at the issues, you can see that I had connected to sort of initial course setup. If you go there, you'll see that there is this line here, which is so I mentioned in commit this 2 months ago, and then marked this issue as closed 2 months ago. So here I've used the #2, which is this particular issue. So if you add learning outcomes. So this is #1, but I had attached to it add learning outcomes, which is #2, and so in #2 I had made a commit that said closes #2, and it closed it and it mentioned it in the commit message, right? So so this is that way of connecting what you do in commit messages, in this commit message here, with the content of the issues, right? So that's a really powerful thing to do, and we'll talk more about it. It is honestly very simple to do. So if I brought up you guys, I suppose I could bring up a GitHub, Gitbash rather. So if I yeah, I might as well show you. So I will just add that to OBS, and I will see if I can add a window, and go OK, and then I hadn't planned to add Gitbash, but I'll do it. Gitbash, where are you? I have too many windows open. Okay, I'm struggling to see where my git bash is. I can see source tree, and okay, so that's whatever my source tree is on, and that's thing. So I've got various projects open. So these projects, so for example, this was my 422 lectures. Here, if on this page I was to say stage that, and then down here in the bottom of the page, again you might have struggle seeing this. I'll just see if I can zoom this in. No, I can't. But if you go, hash for having spent slash having spent time, and do a slash spend 2h. When you commit that and push it, then to the GitLab repo, then what that will do is it will actually add the 2 hours directly to issue hash 4, right? So you can do no, actually the spend won't. The spend will only work in the commit messages. They're looking at adding that at the moment, so I'll just yeah. Okay, I just lost the wrong window, so I will just get you back the window. And there we go. Okay. So, and I'm now behind the window, so I need to move that. And I can probably make this slightly bigger. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, so if you're going to be doing issues, you can do the time tracking in here. The more issues, like if you're using the Atlassian stack, they do a bunch of smart commits. There are a bunch of ways you can play with those connections between what you commit in code and what happens in the repo, and what happens to these issues. So if I go back to the project and I go back to the CI/CD, which I'm supposed to be actually trying to get you through. Okay, so continuous integration deployment is part of what we call DevOps. There's actually a new thing called Design Ops, which is the same idea. It's the same principle of can you automate your pipeline on your process, done for design process, because more and more you don't just draw something on paper and hand it in. You are using many programs, and you are combining many assets and you have to have that pipeline organized. So design op is just coming through, but DevOps is a career in itself in computer science. And so there are whole courses, and you can get a degree in DevOps in many countries now. So this is not something we're going to cover in a single lecture, obviously. We can start talking about CI/CD. So GitLab has an introduction to CI/CD. You can look at creating your that's interesting. Creating your GitLab CI YAML file, which has a link to start you with that, and a description of DevOps, and also something we'll get to at the end of the lecture called pre-commits. Okay, so first of all, if we actually go to the CI/CD page, and I'll make that large enough so you can see it if you're on the tube. So we're now in the GitLab CI/CD tutorial from GitLab itself. Now, rather than me write tutorials, I'd prefer to show you the online tutorials and sort of discuss the key points of them with you in these sessions, and then let you go away and use them, right? So rather than me trying to write a new tutorial, I'm going to use the stuff that exists, because it keeps changing, right? They change it every few months, so there's no point me trying to rewrite this for old versions of stuff. So I might as well just take you to the GitLab CI/CD tutorial. So here it's talking about continuous integration, continuous deployment. In the overview, it takes you through saying, you know, what we're doing is we're looking at whenever you do something to your code, we are adding a pipeline, we're adding a tool that will execute when you add code to your repository. So the idea is that when you're writing code, you are adding new functions, you're doing new things, and then you want to save it and you want to run it and see if it still works, right? So, and see if you've added the right functions. And so this is a way of, instead of you having to sit there and type and go, okay, I've compiled, now I'm going to run it, and I'm sure you all did this in first year. You'd run, and then you'd manually type in the keys and try and test to see if you'd got all of the right keystrokes done, right? So, and that was super annoying, and I remember doing that in my first year. Right, so the background sounds were so loud I had to check to see if it was my computer. Okay. Right, so I can also sort of, I'm sorry if the background fans are loud here. I'll try and keep the noise down. Access to the Bachelor GitLab repo for our project. So if you ask Marius for the GitLab access for the GitLab repo for your project. Screen went out. Yes, it did go back. Hopefully it's all back up now. So the principle is that you were having to manually type in all the test cases. I don't know, did you ever learn to use command line redirection? Command line redirection is where you actually take a program you've written and you redirect a file into standard input, which means you then don't have to type all of that stuff yourself. It certainly makes testing a program so much simpler. So if you are trying to do that, then what you do is you physically type in you start the program, and then you just use the single caret, the redirect, and then you put in the text file, and that will pipe that text file into the standard in for that file. And my lord, it's useful to be able to do that. If you are also taking standard input, you can drag and drop a file. If you set it up correctly, you can drag it, drop it in, and then read the file. And that actually makes life a lot easier to test, because then you can test repeatedly without having to type things yourself. However, that automation of having a file of commands that you want your program to run, you are still having to hit build and then go to the executable, either command line type in the executable name and then type in the test file to run that, look at the outputs, compare it to what you think it would be, go, oh, I'm not sure if that's right, and you manually do all of that comparison. That's a lot of work. You'll often get things wrong, and it might take a while to compile, and you might have more than one test thing to do, and what do you do when you've got that? Well, what continuous integration does is it says, we're going to use the fact that you've committed code, potentially you locally build and make sure that it runs, right? So you've added some code, you've made sure it works. When you commit it to the repository, there is a tool, the continuous integration, that spots you've made that commit and then starts running code, and it has thing called runners, which it uses to run that code. And so what it can do is it can go in and fire up an instance, build that instance, and then run all your test cases. And so if you have a look at this introduction, it takes you through the methodology for catching bugs, because again, this is that kind of running and testing to see if you've got it right, and it's part of this development cycle. So there's an introduction to CI/CD with GitLab, which you can also go and read if you want more of an introduction with the way it works in GitLab. With GitLab, this tutorial, it takes you through the getting started bit, which is setting up this particular file called GitLab-CI YAML. YAML is a programming language, so it's a scripting language, so you can describe and configure things, right? So it just GitLab uses that for its configuration. It could have used other things, and it uses what's called GitLab runners. Now, runners are a program that is sitting listening and waiting for someone to tell it what to do, right? So basically it's an open port on a machine somewhere that's saying, hey, if you have the right token, I'll listen to you and I'll execute a bunch of code, right? And so when I say GitLab runner, all I mean is there's a server somewhere with an open port waiting for your GitLab instance to send it data saying, hey, someone's got something to do, and that program, wherever it is sitting there listening, going, aha, right, you've given me instructions, I'll now do that. Now, this can be a whole bunch of different things that it will do. In this instance, so these GitLab runners, how GitLab CI works. This is an example of setting up one of these files, and it takes you through Jenkins, which would be, say we're building a website, and we're going to use Jenkins as our web tool. Then this will take us through the process of creating that file. And so normally what you do is it's going to take you through all of these terms: pipelines, environment variables, environments, job artifacts, cache, so cache dependencies, schedule pipelines, custom paths, and on and on. All of these things are part of the configuration of a pipeline. Now, if we actually have a look, now where is so if I go to, and it's because I've made this larger, it's harder for me to follow. If I take you through down and we go to the introduction to CI/CD in GitLab, this one takes you through the delivery, deployment, explanations for all of those things, what the GitLab CI does, and an example here for running a GitLab CI. So the apt-get install Ruby gems, Ruby and scripts. This language, so you have the lookup in the top corner. That first thing it finds is a tag for the configuration to say, oh, this configures the before script, or this configures the run test. And then the minus and a command, this is that command is basically what you would type at the command prompt, what you type in command line, and so you are basically telling it, oh, in this configuration run this thing, in this configuration do this thing, and so that's where it runs a script to run Ruby, for example, and it will show you a whole bunch of things. So if you were, in this repo I had done a very simple in the 3602 repo. If we click on CI/CD, you'll be able to see that we actually have been running some failed pipelines and some success. So I've been failing in my pipelines because I've been trying different things. So at the moment, that's why I've got this wee X here, and you may have seen an X on some of the projects saying, you've got a failed deployment, you're not currently functional. Actually, yeah, sorry, that's that hard drive has spun up quite loud. Oh, I'm sorry. It hopefully will go away in a sec. It's just being a bit louder as a computer. So if we go to these, you can actually have a look at this. In my failed pipeline, all the failed pipeline was doing, and I was looking at doing a GitLab Pages thing, which we don't actually have running in this particular instance of GitLab, and the one that we're running, we haven't set up a GitLab Pages instance. But here, what all of this information here is, it's doing GitLab, it's spinning up a Docker image. A Docker image is the idea that you have basically an image of an installed computer that you can run things within, and you can install things in. So the idea is that you might have a Docker for an Apache server, and that will be an Apache server with an SQL server and a PHP program and a CGI thing, and that's enough to run a simple server, and so you can have that image. Now, if you're going to test your website and see that it does everything and responds in the way it's supposed to automated scripts, then you can have a Docker image that has Apache on it, and then load your web page into it, run it in that image, test it, and then get those results. And so this is kind of what this is doing. And the interesting line potentially in here is when you do you can see here it does a fetching changes, and it does a pull. Basically, it does this update of the repo, and it checks out the repo. So here is checking out the latest build from of master from this latest commit. I didn't have any submodules, and then all I had in my GitLab CI was an ls-astr, which is a list of all things short version timed reversed. So that's then this list, which shows me the content of my repository. Now, this is just a command prompt. I can run other commands. I could run a build command. I could run a compile command. I can run other commands at this point. So so if we have a look in my in the project, how I ran that ls script on the Docker image was in my GitLab_CI_YNI file. So in the core of my directory, I have the configuration file for doing continuous integration. In that file, and you can, when you add that file to your repo, you'll be able to kind of add script to it. Here I have tags. Main is the tag for our particular runner that spins up a Docker image for us. On stage deploy, and this line here, which is ls-alstr. So that's the line that ran on a Docker image to see what was in the contents of the file. This was trying to do artifacts and do a public HTML. That failed, which is why my Docker image is failing. If I take this out, I believe it will succeed. So if I go in here and go edit, let's see if this works. And and I just take out the bit that's failing, and I then do, I should really do that with a connection to this particular project, which I forget the number, which was like hash, what was the since the access to the VC is restricted, maybe, right, yeah, so I think it was hash 5. I will have to go to GitLab, and so this is one of the challenges you have, is that when you want to find out which issue that you've made an edit for, you still have to bring up a second version of the repository, go to the issue, find the issue, and connect it. Now, once you've been working on issues for a long time and you know what your issues are, you don't have to do this because you kind of know what your issues numbers are. But if I want to do a smart commit, I go to the issues, and I find out which one is the one I want to connect to, which is issue number 5. So this is hash 5. Update that, commit changes. Now, what happens here is your changes have been successfully committed. I've just committed to the repo, which means the repo will run the GitLab CI YAML file and say, oh, you've just committed something. Now I need to go and check that file to see what it does. And if we go down to the wee rocket ship here, it says, yay, the rocket ship. It has the pipelines that are running. Now, because I've just committed, I'll either still have that running, or it's passed. Excellent. So you can see here 10 seconds ago, I've got my first check mark, and that's because I just took away the bit of code that was failing. Because I didn't have the archive set up, so it wasn't creating a web page. I took that code out, the GitLab runner ran, and this time it passed. And if I go and have a look at that pass, you can see that there's a pipeline, there's one job, so you can actually set up multiple jobs, so you can do multiple things per commit that comes in. And it's saying passed because no error messages came back from it running that build the Docker image, run an ls on the file, see that everything's there, and just exit. And here you see it does the ls minus LTR and then does job succeeded. Right? So this is an example file where it's starting up a Docker image. It's not doing anything useful with it, but if I was running tests, I could return success and failures to here, right? So return error codes, and then I would immediately know if something was failing. And I having done a pull of the repo, so done a check out of the repo, I then do whatever my script is for building and running my code, I do that in the Docker image, I then run my test in the Docker image, and I get my feedback, right? So that's what it's trying to do. And so at the moment we don't have, it's not showing you particularly interesting things. That will be for what you do when you're trying to add this integration. Now, okay, wake up project. Get to the right place. So we've been going for an hour now. So if we have a look at the other thing I was going to talk about. So that's, in a nutshell, what's happening is when you commit, it runs that file. Now, all of this information around what to have in that file, all the methodologies that's going on, this will help you understand what's happening. And here you see a very large one that's doing a similar kind of thing, but with Ruby, right? So it runs lots of instructions, and you can see passing, running, failing. These are the sort of things you'll see. So there's a basic workflow here that is what's going on. So the idea is and you can either have this respond to the master branch or a feature branch. So if you are having a testing feature branch and that's what you want to test, you run your tests. You could have a production branch which would be what gets pushed to your website or gets pushed to outside customers or to your download page, right? So when you're doing like nightly builds or something, you can include this as a nightly build only if it compiles without errors, right? So every night when you leave and there's something that runs and passes all of your tests, you then can push that out as a nightly build because you know that it compiles and runs and passes the tests. You could say if it doesn't pass the tests, don't deploy it, right? So you can stage what you do in response to the CI process. So here you can see what we were doing is we were pushing code changes. The automated build and test is what I was just showing you in that YAML file, YML file. I then see some errors, I push those, I automate the tests and review and approve, merge it to master, and then it deploys it to the external service, right? So there is this standard integration process. So I get something working that I know will work on the server and will work in a simulation of the real environment before I actually push it to my customers. And again, it's about not pushing broken content to your customers at that point, right? Because you want to make sure that as part of this DevOps lifecycle, these packages are doing the right thing and kind of able to respond to these agile processes. Okay, yes, rocket ship. Since access to the BC is restricted, maybe. Right, yes, I should pin a link to that. So I'll do that later so that you can find the link. And I also need to check where is the YouTube, so if anybody's been saying anything there. Okay, so here, as I said, this is the DevOps, and again you can see that they have this DevOps often have this figure 8 infinity pattern. If you get closer to that DevOps pattern, you'll see there's coding and building and verifying and deployment and release. So it goes around in that loop. And here you can see that they're adding more components to it. So and they go through and they explain each of those components to you. And this is quite useful. So here is the setting up the YAML file the first time. If we come down here to setting up your YAML, we can go to where's the next page? It's hard to read it when it's this large. Because normally I read quite fast when I'm normal sized, but at this size it's quite hard to follow. So here we go to the setting up the practical example of running a Jekyll website, right? So here, gem install Jekyll Jekyll build. So that's you install Jekyll and then you use Jekyll to build your project. And so that's why we have the script, and we have a job, which is a script, which is install Jekyll and then Jekyll build, which will build the a website. Now, in GitLab Pages, we use a public directory, and that's why it creates artifacts. But again, here is this idea that there's an additional. This is what I do in script. I can tell the system that I need you to build artifacts, and that's known to a GitLab runner. So a particular GitLab runner will know how to do that. And so it takes you through what are each of the parts of the YAML file. Here, it's using a Ruby image, because Jekyll uses Ruby. You need to tell the Docker, which is that container that spins up a basically virtual machine, that it needs to have the Ruby image, right? So it needs to be able to run Ruby, and then you will install the things that it needs, right? And so you say it's bundle, you bundle install and bundle execute Jekyll build. So you can do the same for a node system, and that which is you can use different tools. But the idea is that you are kind of writing the script that builds something on a remote server. Now, if you're using Unity, there are actual Docker images for Unity that you can use that are headless Unity that will build a tool to see that your project compiles in Unity. So there are ways of kind of, even with something as graphical and visual as Unity, you can still use this kind of integration and deployment. You do need somewhere to run it. Now, we have some runners, and I can show you our admin area. In which one of these was it? This one. In our admin area, for which I have access to and you guys don't, these are the runners that we have currently running on our GitLab server in Ulick. So here, these are specific runners. And specific runners are tied to a particular project, and we have a couple of general runners, and these have tags. That's why I had the tag main in my YAML file, is because this has the tag main here. It also has the tag server and the tag Docker. So if you do any one of those three tags, it will use this one to do that. You can see it just done it recently, right? So this is a just now, as it's been successfully run. So this is shared, which means any of you can see it, and so any of your projects can use this main default Docker image, and it will spin up and it will respond. And it's done 973 project jobs, right? So it's done nearly 1,000 jobs. So that's quite a few. And you can see the projects. This is associated with one project. These aren't associated with projects. They're shared. They'll run on any project. Now, we only have a few of those that we run here. You can also build AWS instances that will sit and listen. In GitLab, instead of sending it to the local runners, and here where you set up and manually set up, you can install GitLab runner, specify the following URL for the GitLab runner, which is this URL, and using that tag, and you can then start the runner. So there's process here, installing a GitLab runner on various different systems. So you can build it on all of these systems. You need you can a Docker service, for example, and you can auto scale, which uses AWS, for example, and it shows you how to create a runner that will listen to GitLab. So if you know that you're building on Windows, for example, you can install a runner on Windows, and it will go through and it will tell you under the runners install Windows how to create an executable runner that will install and start and be listening. And that's why it needs to know the URL, because that's where it goes to look for information, and it will then sit there and run constantly, looking for the GitLab runner to do things, right? So here, this allows you to set up your own runners and then have our instance spin that up. If your runner's not running, then it won't spin it up, right? It won't connect. So there are ways of building your own tools. Now, one of the ways we do this is with an AWS instance, because that will spin up an AWS instance, and then you can do things within Amazon Web Service rather than having to have your own machine connected to the net and being able to be seen by our machine. So there are some advantages to using AWS. So that's kind of a very quick introduction to a whole bunch of these kind of issues about what are we actually trying to do. We are trying to automate the build and testing with continuous integration development. What I expect you to do is I would expect you to be able to add some form of continuous integration into GitHub, into GitLab, or into any other tool that you're using. There should be a way of building and automating. Now, If you're not using any commit messages, then there are some ways of getting around not having an automated tool. You can use makefiles, which when you commit your code, you use makefile to both build the executable and then run tests. Some of you will have used Gradle, which again does build, but then you can also use that to run tests. This allows you to take that and automatically trigger it from your Git commits rather than from your from having to run that manually yourself. It also means that you might not necessarily have to have access to the full environment that it's going to run in because all the time, because you can build on your own machine, and then when you commit it, it goes away and tests it on a different environment, Linux environment or whatever other environments that you want to test your programs on. I had suggested that I was also going to mention one other area which I think is quite important, and that is, if I go to CIC, something called pre-commit hooks. Okay, so when you're doing git bash and you are writing commands, and let's see if I can bring this up, and text, select 36, apply. Okay. Whew, that's massive. Okay, let's see if I can go OK and OK. So if I bring onto the my command line, so I'm just going to test if I can get window capture and OK, and there we go. Okay. So here you see this is a command prompt for this machine. Now, when I'm going to commit something, right? We have this idea of there being pre-commit hooks and post-commit hooks. So the idea is that when you do, if I go to D drive rather. Yes, it's better. And then, oh no, I'm in, right, bash will work. Git. You can see I have a large number of Git projects. So I do a lot of things in Git, and you'll see a whole bunch of previous code. There is the IMT3601 code. So here, when I'm going to commit something and do a git commit, right? When I'm going to do those git commits, what happens is when I push it, it will have what's called a pre-commit hook will fire. And a post-commit hook will fire. Now, for those, when you do that commit message, you get that you get that new hook that is firing. Now, those hooks you can connect to different things. So at the moment, what GitLab is doing is in its continuous integration deployment, it does what's called a post-commit hook. So when I commit and I push things into the repo, that's when it spins up a Docker image and starts testing it. Sometimes you don't want that. What you want is there are these things called pre-commit hooks. And this program, pre-commit, is a really nice tool that you can install, which allows you to use the git hook script, right, and to get the git to respond to those hooks that come out of Git, and do a whole bunch of testing of things. So rather than doing a big build, you may do some pre-commit tests and what we call linting, where we're checking for errors. And those pre-commit things are really useful for making sure that your code complies to standards, rather than get it into the system, realize that you're missing a white space, or realize that you've written your JSON file incorrectly, or you've put something in that isn't going to work, and we already know it's not going to work. We don't have to build it to know it's not going to work, because I just happen to see that I haven't matched my braces or something. So there are tools that will check those sorts of static code issues before you do a full build of your whole tool and a test of the whole tool. And so what this pre-commit idea is that it's a way of connecting the commit messages to a Git repo, and then when the Git message comes in, and you have to install pip and you install the pre-commit package, and then with pre-commit you can set up again a YAML file. So that's using the longer form YAML, but the YAML file that again shows you repos and does the hooks, and here it's showing which hooks it's responding to, and here you install all of this, and what happens then is, before you commit to the repo, you can run all these tests on files, and it will stop you committing bad content to the repo. Now that could be very useful in a high security, high production quality environment. You guys generally won't be working in those environments, certainly not here at university, but in the future, when you're being paid a lot of money to not make mistakes, that's when you may actually need to be certain about what you're committing to the repository, and it can force a bunch of useful rules on you. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop there. Oh, your headset's killing you because of the static. Oh dear. Maybe I have to adjust my audio. I'll try and find a better way of doing audio next time. So we'll try and get my room to be quieter so you don't hear quite so much. And I'll see if I can use this microphone instead. I'm gonna stop and see if you guys have any questions. So one of the questions we had in the Discord is, are pipelines an alternative to acceptance testing, or am I missing understanding? They're a way of automating acceptance testing, right? So that's the right, yeah. Okay. I didn't know I had that thing. Yes, the cat was coming through, so I'm sorry about the cat. I can't really control that, but I'll try and get a quiet area. Right, so there are random fluctuations. I will, yes, I'll try and improve the audio for next time. It's just how where we were. Can you show us the cat? No, the cat's not in here at the moment. No, the black cat came in and then went away again. So no, the cat's not in the room at the moment. But with this idea of as a replacement for acceptance testing, yes, it kind of is, in a sense that acceptance testing is usually something you do with your client and they test it. This is something you can automate so that you can automatically run through tests. Now, one of the things we have to talk about potentially next week, it's actually a black cat rather than a white cat, so they did a white cat meme. Yes, if the cat comes back in, I will show you the cat when it comes back in. My students want to see the cat because they heard Shadow come back in. I have my nephew here in the room with me because it's his cat. But so yeah, the idea is that you can start that automated testing. Now, what I want you to do, and what you need to go away and do, is you need to go away and start trying this. If you update the thing and you show me your repos, you can show me if you're having problems, and I can come in and try and help you fix some of those, right? So rather than you having to do it right now, or waiting for me to stand over you and do it while I watch, if you can go away and read some of the stuff, work out, oh, here comes the cat. Okay, people, I'll show you the cat. There is the cat. Hopefully you can see the cat. He's just been out having some food, it looks like. There we go. So you got the cat, and you got the cat meow. I'm glad Discord is better. If you guys can go away and start building that, and then ask me to come and have a look at your continuous deployment instances, and then what we can try and do is I will what I will do is I will come and I will look at it. If you're having problems, we can make sure that your runners are working correctly, so we can try and get all of those things working for you. Okay. You can also see it's quite nighttime behind me, because it's New Zealand. Okay, so go away, try, just play with some GitLab continuous deployment. You can do it in GitHub as well. If you're having questions, look for words like pre-commit hook, and you can also look at post-commit hooks. One of the interesting ones, one of the very first ones I ever used this for was I used a post-commit hook to do an FTP command which sent an update from my local deployment to my web server, right? So, and all that was a line of script which did an FTP deployment. There are much better ways of doing it now, but that was 20 years ago. That's when I very first started using these idea of having a commit hook, and that was within Subversion rather than within Git. So they're very useful when you want to try and start automating a process and doing this sort of testing. So would it not take longer to push your code again each time you fix something rather than just running your test locally before pushing? So the issue with the difference between running your test locally and running your tests on the server are that for running all your tests, you have to run all your tests. Now you certainly will check most of your compiles, right? So you do this locally. So you check that it doesn't, so you compile your code first and you check that it builds, right? Because if you're pushing buggy code, that's just annoying to everybody, right? So if you're pushing to the master, or you're pushing production or outside of your own branch, then you should always have got your code compiling. But if you have hundreds of tests to run, rather than sitting and waiting at your machine and running hundreds of tests on your machine, you push it and the system then automatically tests all of those for you, right? So test potentially hundreds, does regression tests, make sure that all the old functions are still working. It runs all of those in the background. You can then continue working, right? And for some systems, when the build times are large and the test times are large, it will just do it once overnight if it's massive, right? And so that can be a timed job, and so you can set those up as well. But which is kind of triggering based on a cron job rather than triggering based on the commit message. But yes, it is potentially slower to commit and run all those tests, but it automatically is doing that, so you don't have to, so you can get on and do the other things you need to do. Right, so that's partly why it's better. Yes, you should. So commit hooks are what CI/CD uses. So doing a bit of research on commit hooks is useful to read about. That's the background of how actually CI/CD works. but I want you to read about some CI/CD, and I want you to start implementing that in your projects quite early. But each of your projects might have to do this differently. Some of you will be in GitLab, some of you will be in GitHub, some will have repositories in other places, so you might not be able to, but do start thinking about how you would automate that process. And what we can then look at is if you're having problems, we can also look at Docker images, and I can explain, well, when you want to spin up a server, you want to spin up an AWS instance, what you'd need to do to make that work. So next week, I think what we'll do is I will take you through smart commits and how you can track and log projects in GitLab, and also link commit messages in useful and relevant ways, right? So I want you to be able to kind of do those smart commits, have commits linked to code. One of the nice things is to be able to use the blame feature in GitLab, so you can see who made changes to the code that broke it, and those sort of things for next week. And I hope that if you update all of your projects, you can then tell me when you're trying to do some CI/CD. If you're having problems, email me with a link to the repo. I can then go in and have a look, and I can kind of try and explain what might be wrong and what you need to do to fix that to get the integration working. Okay, are there any other questions? I can't see anybody typing. Oh, the cat's back. Let's see if I can get some. Puss, puss. Nope. Nope, the cat doesn't want to come and have a cuddle. So that's right. Okay, so if you have any other questions, send me an email. And if you have other issues, I don't know if any of you have gone in there and added other things you want to learn yet. So if we go to the issues, we go to the list of issues. Have any of you added issues that you want us to cover? Team, versions, libraries, reflections. Nope, you haven't added a new one yet. So if there is, that was my one comment. If you have a new issue, add it here as an issue and then vote on it. And if a bunch of you want me to talk about something, maybe you want the anatomy of cats, if you want to have a lecture on that, then put it in there, and enough of you can vote it up. I'll talk to you about the anatomy of cats and professional programming somehow. I think the internet is about cats, so it wouldn't be that far off topic. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, if you need access to material, to the repo, to this GitLab server for your bachelor's, then you can ask Mariusz. Okay, well, have a good day, everybody, and I'll let you guys go now. And if you have questions, please email me, please ask me questions. As I said, you guys are starting up your projects. Potentially next week might be a good discussion of your team collaborations and knowing how to work well and effectively in teams. But tell me which you want, and yes, we'll give my cat a hug for you. Actually, here in New Zealand, they have exam cats and puppies, which they bring in during exam time so that students can hug a cat. So the cat's come to say hello. There we go. There's the wee cat. Yes, Shadow. You're looking around. So yes, they have stress cats and stress puppies, and what they do is they bring them in, and before the exam you can go and pat a puppy and cuddle a cat, and then do your exam, and then after the exam when you're very stressed you can come out and pat a kitten and stuff. Cats can be used as a form of relaxation. So good. Have a good night. Good luck, guys. And please email me with your questions and add issues to the GitLab repo and vote them up, and we'll do those. Okay. Great. Good night, guys.